Diplomatic flurries on two fronts. Nuclear negotiators converging on Geneva for the resumption of talks with Iran. Iran, whose new president has sent conciliatory signals. The border, you might say, the unprecedented signals that include Hassan Rouhani's phone conversation with Barack Obama during September's UN Annual Assembly in New York. That 15-minute phone conversation, well, it has a lot of folks worried in Riyadh, where the U.S. Secretary of State was dispatched to reassure the Saudi king of Washington's unflinching support. Kerry will also have some reassuring to do when he touches down Wednesday in Jerusalem, where authorities share fears of a rapprochement with Tehran, an Iran pivot. Tehran, where the supreme leader has been blowing hot and cold the past few days, allowing hardliners to win the battle, for instance, to keep the Death to America chant as a state-sanctioned slogan at rallies. More pointedly, we'll be hearing in a moment from Iran's foreign minister. He's in Paris. He was interviewed a short while ago by France 24's Marc PERELMAN, who joins us for the debate, a debate that asks the question if it's indeed the start of a beautiful friendship with Tehran. Also, he's the signatory, along with 6 other ex-European ambassadors, of a manifesto calling for breakthrough talks with Iran. François NICOULLAUD, thank you for being with us. Former French ambassador to Tehran. Also in our studio is attorney and author Ardavan Amir ASLANI, who we can say is Iranian-born.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. And from London, Iranian journalist and activist Alireza NOURIZADEH. Thank you for joining us for this conversation, the France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24Debate. Mark, before we hear from Mohammad Javad Zarif, the Iranian foreign minister, but who attended San Francisco State and the University of Denver.
Yes, quite a peculiar personality. His 2 children were born in the U.S. He was first a diplomat at the age of 19 when the revolution happened in Tehran. He was projected at the helm of the consulate of Iran in San Francisco. He then went on for a long diplomatic career, and he had stints as Iran's ambassador to the United Nations, where I once interviewed him a decade ago and had some conversations, off-the-record conversation at the time. And so he's clearly of a different cloth than many other Iranian officials. He is at ease with the media. He knows to give a little bit, but also obviously to be diplomatic. So he's a very interesting character and a pivotal one right now, because some hardliners in Iran are not too happy to see him there. He knows he has a few months to make it happen on the diplomatic front.
A few months to make it happen. He's meeting right now with his French counterpart, Laurent Fabius. François NICOULLAUD, the new Iranian foreign minister, as Mark was saying, no stranger to the Iranian political scene.
No, certainly not. I happened to know him, in fact, when I was ambassador in Tehran in between 2001 and 2005. He was one of the negotiators at the time. He was part of the team put together by Rouhani, and really we had an excellent relationship. Everything being said, I mean, one has to remember that he's faithful to of course, to Iran. He's a real patriot. He is faithful to the Islamic Revolution, and he's quite able. I mean, he has an excellent contact with the Western world that he knows perfectly. There are, in fact, many people like that in Iran, you know, and even within the civil service, even within the Iranian diplomacy, of course, after this period of negotiation, he disappeared from the stage during the Ahmadinejad period. He was really doing nothing. He was in a kind of think tank, probably. And then suddenly he comes back to the pleasure of all people who have known him at the time, yes.
All right, so up he pops. He's in Paris on the eve of those talks in Geneva. Iran's foreign minister, optimistic that within a week there can be a breakthrough.
Now, we need to see an end game that we can all agree in, and we need to take a first step mutually on all sides, so that we address the most immediate concerns of the various sides involved in these negotiations.
Western countries, the United States, do not trust Iran's peaceful intentions when it comes to the nuclear program. What can you do in very concrete terms to reestablish that trust? Are you ready to allow
more intrusive inspections of several sites? Are you ready to cap the level of enrichment of uranium? Are you prepared to take those steps?
Well, first of all, we have to be clear. Lack of trust is a mutual problem. We believe that E3+3, particularly the Western members of E3+3, need to regain the trust of Iranian people who've been the subject of illegal, inhuman sanctions that have been imposed on even the purchase of medicine.
All right, so a bit of an artful dodge there, saying, well, you make the first move. Ease up on those sanctions a little bit.
Yes, obviously this is the line of the regime. Sanctions are illegal, illegitimate, they're hurting.
What makes him so confident, though, that there's going to be...
Well, he said in another part of the interview that he thinks that this week, meaning at the end of this week, there could be an agreement on a framework agreement. He says if it's not done this week, it'll be at the next round of talks. So he's optimistic that there could be a breakthrough, and at least that the talks will continue. So certainly there have been some discussions behind the scenes that allow him to show some optimism. Obviously, he also knows that the West, and especially the United States, are very wary. They want to see some concrete steps. And he told me several times he will not negotiate on air. So clearly, in terms of the technical approach, what Iran wants to give, what Iran expects to get from the West is not clear, but he sounded rather optimistic.
All right, played his cards close to his chest. Alireza NOURIZADEH, are you optimistic that there can be a big breakthrough in Geneva?
Hi to you and your guest, and also my sympathy to Jocelyne and Claude brutal murder, and I have all my sympathy with you all.
We appreciate it.
Well, first of all, let me say, on the contrary of what we used to say, singer, not the song, in Iranian politics, it's the song, not the singer. Mohammad Javad Zarif is not different from his predecessor, from Mr. Salehi, who was such a wonderful person as a director of Iranian nuclear organization and a good foreign minister. And prior to him, Mr. Muttaqi or others, I mean, Mr. Kharazi. The problem in Iranian politics is someone unelected by the Iranian people called Wali Faqih. He's the one who makes decision. And these people has to sing just what he asked him. I mean, the conductor is Mr. Khamenei. He didn't give such a, luxury to Mr. Salehi or to before him to Mr. Velayati or any other person. The question, anyway, Velayati is his advisor, but the question is, now Mr. Khamenei feels it's necessary. The country is in chaos economically. The people who were supporting the regime in the past, the poor, the oppressed people, these people are now very angry when they see the corruption, when they see all these wonderful thousands of
dollars. So Khamenei and is the one who has the final say. Is Khamenei singing from the same hymn sheet as the new president?
Well, actually, what he's doing, Khamenei, he's singing two songs, one for internal consumption and one for external consumption. As a matter of fact, the day before yesterday, he gave all his support for the negotiation team, Foreign Minister and Mr. Rouhani, because there is no other alternative. Khamenei wants the sanction to be lifted as quickly as possible. The country cannot go any further. And the new sanction, which is discussed by the US Congress, is horrible. It will prevent us from exporting more than 500,000 barrels a day of oil. So therefore, they need all these sanctions to be lifted. Therefore, we see leniency, we see there are more logic, understanding the demand. And on the other hand, United States and United States Western allies, they also want to come to a compromise. They are ready to give Iran a face-saving formula to to get out of negotiation and still stands on its feet and tell to his nation, okay, we achieved something. Now I am optimistic more than ever. I think we are very close to reaching a comprehensive agreement which will enable Iran to continue enrichment process, but just 3.5% to 5%. And also it will open some gates, some closed gates for the inspector to go and inspect. And also eventually Iran will agree to other demand from the United States.
All right, so there is a window of opportunity. Ardavan, you share that feeling that...
No, I think that Mr. Nourizadeh pretty well summarized the situation. What is different today, however, is that although the last final decision on every fundamental issue in Iran belongs, as it was rightly said, to the supreme leader, it is also true that the current administration obtained a mandate from the majority of the Iranian electorate, who specifically charge these people with the responsibility of getting rid of the sanctions that was mentioned. Now, for the first time, probably in 2 decades, we are having the president who's on the same wavelength as the supreme leader. The supreme leader 2 days ago specifically compelled the hostile hardliners to the peace process and to the negotiations to silence and told them, you cannot discredit the negotiating team who are working on behalf of Iran. It is true, the regime is striving to do whatever it can to end the sanctions. Why? Because it has well understood that for it to be able to ensure its continuity, it will need to purchase social peace. And that can only be done if an future in economy, a future in job market can be provided to the Iranian people.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, warning his compatriots not to dismiss Rouhani's negotiators as, quote, compromisers. They're children of the revolution on a difficult mission, he said. But Khamenei also told Iranian diplomats to be wary of Americans.
Be careful not to be deceived by the deceitful smiles. The Americans smile and express willingness to talk. At the same time, they say all options are on the table. So what? What move? What thing can they possibly do against the Islamic Republic of Iran?
So there definitely were 2 messages there.
Yes, but this is Khamenei. It's true that he gave a mandate also to Rouhani. He has confidence in Rouhani. You know, they know one another. They have known one another for 30 years, you know. And it's quite interesting because Khamenei knows that Rouhani is not exactly on the same line, but he trusts him. He trusts him. He trusted him in the first period when Rouhani was the negotiator on the nuclear file. And I remember very well, I didn't hear it personally, but I had echoes from people who were present to the meeting of Khamenei telling to the group of the Supreme Council of the National Council, Security Council, I don't believe in this negotiation. I mean, I'm quite skeptical. But if you feel that you should go ahead, go ahead. I mean, I just want that my opinion be reported on the, the source for history. That's quite interesting. It shows that he leaves some leeway and eventually a lot of leeway to the people. But he did say again that he's
not optimistic.
He's not optimistic, but he tells Rouhani, I mean, take your chance, I mean, try and we'll see what the result is.
The danger about an excessive optimism over here is that you can only disappoint people. So what the supreme leader is doing in Iran today is appealing to the people not to get carried away, not to get too excited, because they are on a very cumbersome path. They have a very short time frame, and the demonstrations of thousands of hardliners that we saw on the occasion of the anniversary of the takeover of the U.S. Embassy is an alarm sign for those that are negotiating today. You have a number of people that are waiting for these negotiations not to reach a successful outcome. so that they can come out, finger point at the Americans and telling them you can't trust them. When the Supreme Leader refers to you can't trust smiling Americans, it's smile in the direction of Bibi Netanyahu, who constantly says that you can't trust people who smile. But this time, it's different. It's a different story. 6 months is all the time that Rouhani and his team have. The dire economic situation of the Iranian people is such that we are counting days, not years, when the boiling point may be reached. So they know that if they are unable to reach a settlement, let's say by the coming of the Iranian New Year in March, they will have huge difficulties locally. And it is obvious and it is apparent. The Supreme Leader, however, is putting his entire weight behind the negotiating team, telling people they are on a heroic mission. We have to defend them, and you're not authorized to question their decency, their dignity, or their full allegiance to the Islamic Republic.
So there's pressure on the Iranian side. There's also pressure on the American side, of course, and we'll see the regional reactions. Ambassador, last week in an interview with Israeli television, the U.S. negotiator Wendy Sherman said, no deal would be better than a bad deal. Now, in the manifesto that you published with 6 other ambassadors, you said, I mean, it almost sounds like what Ardavan said, but to the Western negotiators.
Well, no deal, I mean, better than a bad deal is one of the mantras that everybody hears at the moment. Of course, everybody has to agree with that. Of course, everybody wants a good deal. But I believe that a good deal is really within reach. It's not, if Zarif was optimistic today, I guess that is because, you know, there were a meeting at experts level a few days ago. One can hope that here lies the heart of the matter, you know, because basically, I mean, the heart of the negotiation is, you know, to agree on the scientific and technical parameters of about how long would it take Iran to reach to the bomb if Iran decides to throw away the inspector, the IAEA, all kinds of controls. And this is the discussion. And this is a really scientific and technical discussion. If people have agreed on the basic parameters, things at political level should go quite fast.
Right, and I should add that I asked the foreign minister about this, and he did confirm that there was indeed a very productive meeting of technical experts, and actually maybe the head of the IAEA...
And hence the optimism.
Yes, and the head of the IAEA is maybe traveling to Tehran next week for a follow-up meeting. So there are kind of parallel tracks, the technical and the political negotiations, but they obviously go hand in hand.
There's one more point, if I may dare say. Yesterday, on a long interview, the chief negotiator on the American side on these nuclear talks specifically mentioned the possibility that in the event gestures come out of Iran, America may be willing to consider a relief on the sanctions as of this week. It will not touch the oil issue or the banking system issue, but there will be some relief.
There may be some relief, and so those signs, we're going to talk about them and how they're going down in places like Saudi Arabia and Israel. Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.